Imagine being a Nazi officer and being in the night and hearing a sound which is incredibly scary. Like, it sounds almost like a witch flying on her broom. And you are very, very scared because you know that when you hear that sound, you are about to die. So today's story is set during the Second World War. You know that there's like various parties involved in the Second World War, but specifically we're talking about Nazis versus Soviet Union. Now, I don't know if you know this, probably you do, and maybe I'm the only one that didn't realize this, but well, we all know that one of the issues that we had in fighting, I say we, the Italians, yeah, let's not talk about the Italians' involvement. That's kind of embarrassing. But you know how the goodies had a bad time at the beginning with the Nazis because the Nazis were the first to have jet planes. So this gave them a very big advantage at the beginning of the war. However, by the end of the war, jet planes were something that most armies had. So the US Army had it, the UK Army had jet planes. What are jet planes? So before we had planes which were flying thanks to a propeller. So how does a plane fly? First of all, so the plane has to go really fast in a horizontal way because there is a force that pushes up the wings, which the more you go fast horizontally, the more this vertical force pushes the airplane up, right? That's how airplanes stay up. So what you need is something to kind of propel the airplane forward. And that's why, you know, the name of these little machines that initially kept planes up were called propellers, all right? So it's that twirly thing at the front of the airplane. Imagine these airplanes were like with those two parallel wings, okay? And there's like an engine that makes this little propeller turn, all right? And this is what they were using before. But the big innovation of the jet planes was that you don't have the propeller anymore. You have another thing, which is not exactly an engine. It's like, my partner explained it to me, but it went way over my head. But basically, it uses jet fuel and it produces these fumes which get shot out very fast from the airplane, and that's what propels the airplane forward, okay? So this is a lot more efficient and allows the airplane to go a lot faster, all right? These jet planes also came with a lot of other innovative features which made them a lot more technological and useful in a war, okay? However, I told you that by the end of the war, the UK, the USA, they have their own jet planes, but you know who doesn't ever get to have jet planes throughout the Second World War and only gets jet planes later? The Soviet Union. This, however, did not impede the Soviet Union from whooping the Nazis' ass, and that is one of the things that we're going to be talking about today. About how they were able, with much kind of lower technology, able to do this. Although we're going to be talking about a very, very specific regiment that was able to do this, okay? A few more things I need to tell you about the Soviet Union. So this isn't like a propaganda video about the Soviet Union. Like, I'm not a communist, but I do need to let you know that the Bolshevik government that comes into power in 1917, obviously, like, living there must have been very hard because there was, you know, the government was spying on you, all those things that we know about. But there were also a few pros, I want to say, about this new government, because they were very, very forward thinking when it came to women's emancipation. In fact, a lot of things that we really consider to be feminist ideals, which took place later in other governments, in other countries, which we usually consider to be very, very advanced in general, actually started here a lot earlier, all right? So with the new Bolshevik government in 1917, women are considered equal to men politically, economically. They just are incredibly emancipated, okay? I got very interested, small detour here, I got very interested in this subject because there is this writer, which is called Natasha Pulley, and she actually writes, she writes fantasy novels, okay, for the most part, which I adore. She, like, look her up, she's fantastic. But she wrote this one novel, which wasn't a fantasy novel, which was set in the Soviet Union, I want to say in the 60s or something. It's called The Half-Life of... what was it called? Just a moment. Okay, so the book by Natasha Pulley, The Half-Life of... I can't believe this. The Half-Life of Valerie Kay, okay? Great book. It's not usually the kind of book that I read because I literally, either I read fantasy novels or I read like history books, biographies, and like very factual things. I don't really read much that's in the middle, but this writer Natasha Pulley wrote this one book which is not a fantasy novel, which is set in the Soviet Union, and of course it shows all like the difficulties and of living there. It's a very like dramatic adventure, but it kind of depicts like the horrible side of it, but it also sheds light on something which I wasn't really aware of until I read this book, and then I looked it up, so I fact-checked it. Really, women in the Soviet Union were far more emancipated than their counterparts in, you know, what we consider to be advanced countries, okay? Now, obviously, that always came at a cost, right? Women went from being not allowed to participate in, you know, the public scene and, you know, the government, and in, didn't have access to a lot of jobs and to education. And they went to having all of this, but they were still expected to kind of take care of the kids and work at home. So it's a little bit like when it happened to us, right? You know, we got emancipated, but we were still expected to do everything at home. So we ended up having like double the amount of shit to do, all right? So same there, but there was just this kind of a difference, okay? I'm telling you this because it plays an important part in the start of this particular division of the army. Okay, so we already had women in the army. They were accepted in the army, although, you know, people don't go from being, you know, patriarchal idiots to, you know, feminists overnight. So there was still a little bit of like, yeah, we're going to allow you to do some stuff, but we're not going to allow you to have access to combat because you don't know how to do that. Or one thing we definitely do not want you to do as women is play with our toys. So you're not allowed to fly planes. No way. Okay. So at the beginning, they're keeping them away from planes. However, there's a lot of women, they're like the Russian women are really, really wanting to enter the army and help against the Nazis as much as they can. Then we have a very important part is played in this by Marina Roskova. Marina Roskova, I'm not exactly sure how she ended up in aviation because her family were like musicians and singers. Like she was into singing as well. And then at some point she marries this engineer. She also has a daughter with this engineer. And that's what gets her into, she becomes a draftswoman for like projects of, you know, of engineering. And somehow that gets her into aviation. And she becomes one of the first female pilots of in the Soviet Union. And she even becomes a teacher in the aviation academy. She's teaching like male pupils about navigation and about aviation, about flying, okay? And she, this makes her get to a position in which she knows Stalin. She gets to talk to him on a regular basis. And she's like having a go at Stalin saying, dude, like I have all these women writing to me telling me that they want to also start flying against, you know, the Nazis. They want to play a part in this war too. So let me do this. Let me create, you know, a division where women can do this. So she nags at him, nags at him, nags at him. And finally he consents. And in 1941, the 588th Regiment is created. Okay, in a little town in Engels, I believe it was called, in Russia, you know, a few hundred women start coming there to be trained in flying. And this regiment is like, it's all women. So all like the support on the ground, the organization, everything, the teachers, all 100% female. Okay, so probably they were actually getting things done. So we have, when they get there, these women are actually met by Marina herself, and they are supplied with what the army can give them, really, because to be fair, the army is not believing in this project like entirely, so they're not, and this army, as you know, like they have planes which are not well equipped like the enemy, so it's not like they have all this extra stuff to give away, and what they certainly don't have is like gear that fits women. So these women have to wear like a size 13 boots for all of them. All right. So, and then they have to like shove paper in the boots to make their feet fit. They have to wear these outfits, which were actually for much bigger men than them, and kind of pull them together, make them fit. So they are working already in a discomfort which is higher than like their male counterparts. And they shave their heads and they turn these ladies into pilots. Okay. Now, when they're training these women, they are training them with an airplane which is specifically designed for training. And it's also a very low budget design, okay? It's an airplane which was designed to be low budget and just for training. This airplane is called the Polikarpov U-2, and it's made out of, I kid you not, greased canvas and wood and a little bit of steel here and there. Okay, that's all very well because you're just training, right? Yeah, well, the problem with that is that when they actually start doing their missions, that is still the airplane they are handed. So their job, so this regiment is a regiment whose job it is to bomb the Nazis, basically. So they're not meant to go up to, combat, actual like face-to-face combat. They're just meant to fly over and bomb, all right? What they are supplied with in these airplanes is a flashlight, a map, a helmet. They don't have a parachute because the parachute weighs too much and they have to carry as many bombs as they can, and a pistol. That's all they have, all right? These airplanes fly at a maximum speed of just under 100 miles per hour. My car goes faster than these planes. Okay. And so this is what they got. What they're going up against, is they're going up against the Nazis, which have the top end of what is available at the time. So we're talking about planes which, well, first of all, they're made of steel, so you can fire a bullet at it and you're not going to necessarily kill the person driving it. They have machine guns, they have heating, they have navigational systems which are far more advanced, and they go like 500 miles per hour, okay? By the way, there was obviously no heating in the Polikarpov U-2, so temperatures would reach sometimes like freezing point, and a lot of these women actually got frostbite so bad that they lost some toes. There were a lot of lost toes in this regiment, okay? So, I was supposed to cook lunch. Giacomo, you're supposed to tell me. Okay, so, oh my God, I get so into this that I don't even know why I try to cook when I'm doing these videos. It's just that I'm trying to, actually get some stuff done whilst I do this. But anyway, so they're going up against this equipment, which is just far more kind of advanced than what they have going for them. So it's really, really nuts. However, these women are able to, the saying, if they give you lemons, turn it into lemonade. Well, they're more like, if they give you lemons, turn it into a Nazi killing bomb shower, because that's what they did. They would go on these missions, and I say lemons into kind of like lemonade because they were able to use their poor equipment to their advantage, okay? So I told you that these airplanes go kind of slow. So you can go slower with a plane if you are lighter. So the fact that these planes were particularly light meant that they could go slower, and they could also allow themselves to turn all the engines off, well, all engines, like the one engine off, and still hold themselves in the air for a while before having to turn the engine back on. So they use this to, they would be over their enemy and they would turn off the engine and the enemy wouldn't even know they were there, okay? They couldn't find them because of the sound of the engine. They couldn't find them because they had no electronic equipment aboard, so they couldn't figure them out, you know, with radars and stuff. So they were like ghosts coming in and out. You couldn't hear them come in. You wouldn't know that they were there until the bombs were raining on top of you, okay? It is said that you could hear at the very last moment just the sound of the wind passing over the wings, which it is said, it's not for sure, but it is said that that's how they gained the nickname, which was given to them by the Nazis, of night witches, because you just hear this wind coming through and then bam, you were dead, okay? So these women actually really enjoyed the nickname. I would enjoy that nickname too. If I was nicknamed like the Night Witch, I would totally love that. And so the Nazis just couldn't understand how it's possible that these women could whoop their asses so much. So they made up stories like, well, maybe they're real witches. They must be on special drugs to make them super powerful, because they just couldn't conceive that they were being, you know, kicked in the ass so badly by these women. But these women would just go in and they would do like multiple missions a night, okay? Like 7 missions. This means like go in, drop the bombs, come back, refuel, more bombs, go in, more and more times in a night. Okay, this is incredible. All right. Nadia Popova, who died in 2013, she was the last living member of this regiment, and she was one of the most decorated women of this regiment. She was renowned for having done 18 missions in one night. Can you imagine that? By the time she got back, she had more than 100 bullet holes in the plane and 1 bullet hole in her helmet, okay? Marina, who we were talking about before, she actually ended up dying in 1943 during the war. So obviously a lot of these women lost their lives. However, a lot of them lived till after the end of the war and were extremely decorated. They were among the most decorated women in the Soviet army. The Nazis were so like scared of these women that it became like if you were able to kill one of these women, you would be automatically given an Iron Cross, which is a major like a great medal to have for a Nazi soldier. And imagine they were doing this with these planes, which served a good use for the reasons I said, but were also like this plane was nicknamed Kerosinka because it had a tendency to catch on fire, because obviously, you know, the wax material was also quite flammable, right? However, the adventures that these women gave these airplanes during this period also gave this airplane a kind of a position in history as the only biplane who has been able to bring down a jet plane. Even though these women played such an important part in the fight against the Nazis, they weren't as rewarded as I think they should be. So, for example, during the victory parade, they weren't allowed to fly because their plane was too slow. I don't know why they couldn't have worked it in some way. However, it was absolutely incredible. Nadia Popova, who I was telling you about, who died in 2013. Oh, by the way, she started flying at 15 years old. Her brother was killed by the Nazis, so she wanted to become a pilot, and they wouldn't allow her. But soon after that, that's when the regiment was created, so she was able to join that. And by 18, she was teaching other women how to fly, okay? It was really nice to see this interview with her in which she says, she recalls those years in which she was flying as a pilot, and she said, you know, I don't know how I did it, where sometimes I close my eyes and I picture myself in my plane and I don't know how I did it. Nadia, we also have no idea how you did it, but incredible, incredible women.